The Awkward Genius Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Awkward Genius Podcast. I apologize in advance because this podcast is really terrible. Every day I sit down, talk to my camera about whatever's going on in my brain, and basically I do it just to get better at talking to camera and as practice for myself. Now that means a lot of it is painfully boring, or how would you say it? Extraordinarily uncomfortable, or just not interesting. I guess that's the boring part. Like I said, I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to look for words in the thesaurus, and I'm going to fail. Things are going to happen that I have no control over because my mouth will start going in one way and my brain will not follow. So this is where we're going to be. You've been warned. Like I've said in many other podcast episodes, you're not supposed to be here. Nobody's supposed to be listening to this. If you find some crazy pleasure in listening to some random guy from Vermont who now lives over in the French Alps, sitting at his coffee table, kitchen table, talking to you, then go ahead and go for it. Like I said before, I think this podcast is basically made for maybe people that are going insane and they just need something to push them over the edge, or for people who have trouble sleeping and find me sufficiently boring to get the job done. Now, because of the extreme balding which is happening up here, I tend to wear a little hat for winter warmth. I don't keep my house super hot. I don't really like that. But the constant hatting does kind of mess up the hair. So again, for those of you who are listening to this in podcast mode, that is so much better. I am hideously unattractive and my hair is a mess. And every time I tilt a little bit in the wrong direction, you realize how incredibly bald I am. I do have, I don't know where I put it. Oh, it's right there. I'll be right back. Just listen to the sound of my voice. I have not abandoned you. I am still here. Now, you saw what I was wearing at the beginning of the podcast, which was this fantastic hand-knit wool hat that I got last year at the Christmas market. Wonderful little old lady, little French lady. She knitted this for me a couple days ago. It was this year's Christmas market. I went back, I got another one just because I want to be wearing these hats for the rest of my life, and I don't know if they're going to last for 8 or 9 more years. So I got this, which is a nice hat, but maybe just to cover the balding. I don't know if you can tell the difference in craftsmanship. For those of you that are just listening to this on the podcast, the handmade one by the French grandmother is just big and beefy, and the colors are really nicely mixed together. There's almost like a mixing of the colors. It's fantastic. This one, incredibly basic. It's got this really weird band in the middle for no reason. Beige and blue. And the best part is the fit. This was made by some random lady who apparently knows how to make hats, because this is how it fits me. This is one, and wait for the kicker. I guess it's more like just a woolly yarmulke, which I guess would be good for my balding. This is the hat that I knitted, probably 30 some odd years ago. It was for 2 summers in Vermont. I worked as a long trail caretaker, which basically meant that I lived on the long trail and took care of some part of the trail and some element of public relations often, and usually had something to do with sewage, which is the kind of unknown aspect of what all these backcountry people are doing. In any case, this first year that I was working on the Long Trail in Vermont, which, if you don't know, it's a long trail in the woods that goes from the southern border of Vermont to the northern border of Vermont. The southern half of the Long Trail is also the Appalachian Trail, which begins in Georgia and goes all the way up to Maine. So after that southern half of the Long Trail, the Appalachian Trail cuts off and goes up to Maine. The Long Trail keeps going and goes to the Canadian border. So I was working on the Long Trail on the third highest summit in Vermont called Camel's Hump. And my job, I had a little log cabin at the bottom, right next to the parking lot where people would come in and park to go hike up the trail. A little log cabin right there. And every day I would hike up to the summit of the mountain and sit at the highest point. And then as people came up, I would greet them. I was like a Walmart greeter, except at the summit of a mountain after a 600-meter hike, 600-meter vertical climb. And so that was my job. Excuse me for the throat clearing. And as you might assume, because I did need to kind of stay in that spot and be available when people showed up, there wasn't a whole lot else I could do. I could wander around, pick up some garbage, but basically there wasn't that much. That was part of my job, is letting people know what their responsibility was. So I had some free time. And then, of course, when I wasn't on the summit of the mountain, or if it was like a super rainy day, but those days I was actually out usually doing trail work in the rain, I was in the log cabin, and again, not a lot to do in the log cabin. So I took up, naturally, knitting, as any, 22-year-old red-blooded young man would. And I wasn't very good at it, apparently, because this wool yarmulke is about the best thing I made. I did make one sock. It was so much work, fit poorly, and was garbage that I did not bother making a second. I believe there was one other hat that I made. That one, way too big. Interestingly enough, gave that to my older sister Jen. And I don't know if at some point we may have tried to boil it and get it to shrink some. I don't believe that working. I believe what that did is it ruined all the colors, so that instead of being multicolored, it was just like a kind of middling taupe gray. Anyway, so that's the story of this hat, which it actually is a pretty good just bald spot cover. And also just for around the house, like I said, I keep the house fairly cool because I'm poor. And so I end up wearing sweaters and hats in the house all winter long, quite often. Especially this time of year. It's going to get colder. We're going to have snow. And that time of year won't feel as cold. It won't be as miserable as it is right now. It has been raining for, like I said, about 8 weeks. We're right above 0 Celsius, so we're in the 30s Fahrenheit, and it's just incredibly humid. I actually have a river which is opened up in my basement, and that just happens. There's a place where there's a dirt wall because it's like a crawl space basement, and if you get enough water in the water table, it just pokes through, and I have a river coming through. We've got the whole floor is gravel, and then underneath it we've got these drainage pipes, and then that connects to a drainage system around the house to take the water away. So it's draining, it's not filling up, it's not going to cause any immediate damage. Constant humidity, so I've got the humidifier in there. I made a video at the end of the summer, because my summer project this year was just doing a whole bunch of different stuff to try and deal with the humidity in there. Even though it is basically a crawl space, I have no storage. I have very little storage in this house, so having that space where I can put bikes, lawnmowers, lumber, tools, good bit of stuff needs to go somewhere. Skis and stuff in the summer. So I do try to keep that space as healthy as possible. As also, of course, it's underneath the foundation, well, not the foundation, but the wood part of my house. I don't want that rotting out. So anyway, this time of year is terribly unpleasant. Especially now we're in the shortest days of the year. I guess we're still getting shorter and shorter. Another week or so. So these 2 weeks before the solstice and the 2 weeks after, it's just dark. It's been raining constantly, so gray, and so you just kind of always feel cold, or I do anyway. So I'm often wearing a hat. Later on in the winter, that will be a little bit less necessary. Well, we got the snow and the cold, and then the sunshine just bouncing off the snow and just keeping everything, actually getting you some light and some happiness. So that is the story of this wool hat, which I personally knitted with fairly, not low grade, but just not very fancy wool, I'm thinking, because on the part, since my whole head is bald back here, the wool is actually a little bit scratchy on the top of my head. So I'm not sure if this is going to be something I can do much. I tried putting this on my 7-year-old, just barely fits him. Like, he's going to grow out of it in a couple of weeks. So I'm not sure. I keep this around just because it is a vestige of a time when I knitted. It is a memory of the couple of summers that I did work on the long trail. Fantastic summers, just outside the whole summer long. There was a lot of cabins. That doesn't count as being in a house. So that was the first 2 summers that I found a job where I was just spending the whole summer outside. In this case, the first summer I was going up the mountain and sitting on the summit. The second summer, I just had a campsite next to a lake in the middle of nowhere. I had to hike in like 2 hours to get to my lake. And I camped there all summer. And then there was a tenting platform nearby. So when people would come, I would explain to them how that works. And then during the day, I would shovel their poop, because that was how the composting toilet worked. It needed some shoveling and some mixing, and it was a fantastic summer. That lake was great. I had a canoe, fly fishing. There was a cliff on the other side, like at least a rock outcropping that was at least 10 feet high you could jump off of. Nice little lake. So memories of that. The first 2 summers I got to spend outside. When I came to France, I don't know what I was doing for the summers, but I didn't have that many of them before I just completely lucked into this job as basically a hiking guide in a French vacation center. It was a small ski station with 5 or 6 vacation centers, and each center had their own little hiking guide. And in France, you have to have a license to actually really take people up into the mountains. So I was really just, strolling them around the trails around the ski area. I couldn't go anywhere too high up in the mountains. And it was fantastic because I applied for this job and could not barely speak French, but my French was poor. It was very, very poor. And so the guy obviously said, "No, I'm not going to hire you. You have no experience at this. You're supposed to be able to tell people about nature that you'll be seeing." So it was like a nature guide, I guess. Just the basics: birds, trees, animals, plants, and none of that. So no, I'm not going to hire you. And then, like a week before, the people that he had hired started dropping. And so he was going down the list and finding people to offer the job to, and he had to go with the ones he'd already interviewed. So he got down far enough on the list that he had to call me. And I, of course, said yes. So because of the experience I had on the long trail, he said, well, there's some, you were a nature guide there. Maybe that could work here. But no, I knew absolutely nothing. So I got there like a week before, a couple days before the tourists came. And we just went on with the group of the other nature guides who knew their stuff. Because again, these are all people or kids that were coming from, they were in university, studying geology or biology or nature, or people that just lived in the mountains and been doing this forever, or they were studying for the high-end government diploma to actually be a real hiking guide, trekking guide up in the high mountains. And so I just went hiking with them, and every time they would explain something, I had a little notepad, and I would draw a picture of it, the plant or the mountain or whatever it was, and then I would write everything they told me about it. So I had this whole like nature guide of all the plants that we were going to see, or a lot of them. And then when we would get to a certain overlook, I'd just do the summits and be like, this one's that. And for the first couple of weeks, I was literally just looking at notes. I'd get to a summit and would be like, or get to an overlook and be like, okay, well, there's this summit and there's that one. So it was fairly catastrophic. I don't know if I lucked into it. It was my good luck and his bad luck. And then, because I had a year of experience, I was welcome back, and I went back to that for 2 more summers. So I did 2 summers on the Long Trail in Vermont, 3 summers as a nature guide in France before I got the government hiking guide license. And then at that point, I did 1 summer. So we were already at 2 and 3, so that was 5. Then I did a summer of leading day hikes, which was part of my training for the hiking guide diploma. And then I did 3 summers as a trekking guide. 3 or 4. 2 with a mule, I was actually a mule driver. And so I would lead the group and the mule, who had all of our not our packs, we all had day packs, but had a bag for each of us for our nighttime gear. So we only had to carry what we needed for the day hike, our lunch and rain gear and change of clothes and whatnot. And then everything for the evening was on the donkey or the mule. And so I drove the mule, and I also had to do where the trail was that we were taking, and deal with the people. So I believe I managed to spend, I thought it was 10, but doing the math there, that sounds closer to 9 summers where I was out in the mountains every single day, either living or hiking or trekking. Out in the mountains, whenever we were trekking, I was staying in the mountain huts every night. When I was in the nature guide, I had an apartment at the ski station. But every day, my daily uniform was shorts and hiking boots, and I was outside. So, and that was all by the age of 33, 34. I spent 9 summers outside and pieced together, not all, just one thing, you do that forever. A little bit in Vermont, then I found something similar, I found something that could work also in France, and then I got a diploma and did something else, and that was France and Italy and Spain, Switzerland. I did take one, that was in the summer, that was one autumn that I went and did a week in the Pyrenees and then a week in the Sierra Nevada, but that's just vacation, that doesn't really count. So I only got to 9. I have to find another summer at some point where I can just bail and spend the whole summer outside. So there we go. That is me just talking to camera. I did want to talk about retirement savings, because that's going to be my next video. And I figured a good idea was to take my working script and just chat through it once. So I kind of get any vocabulary or ideas or the rhythm of how the story works. But that's not what happened today, is it? What happened today is I got talking about, all I can remember is wool hats, and then the history of my time working outside in the mountains. So, little personal snapshot today, along with what you're seeing here with me and the wool hat. Again, I have the camera turned in normal mode, where I'm just looking at the back of the camera. It's not selfie mode, so I can't see how poorly this looks. I did bring a light out today, so hopefully the lighting is a little bit better. If you want to get a sense of what this looks like, this is how we light the shot so that we're as good as possible. I'm guessing from the way the camera is that I spent all this time talking about my hat and that the shot probably cuts off right about where it is. So I could probably be doing this. I get the light right there. Oh, running out of cord. And then I just kind of, there we go. Now maybe I'm in frame. Sorry about the last 20 minutes where I was out of frame, but that's how that goes sometimes. So if anybody is watching this, I do appreciate that you're being here. I do thank you for listening. And I don't believe I've got anything else to say. Tomorrow there will be a new episode. Saturday and Sunday, probably not. I got the boys. We got Christmas coming up. We got a lot of stuff to do. I doubt I'm gonna have any time to do anything as trivial and frivolous as this exercise. This Saturday there's a video coming out. I believe it is about how I made $100 on YouTube. A lot of people try YouTube and then they fight to get monetized, and that's the whole story of I got monetized finally. Well, I made $100 just from YouTube ad revenue, and I got a video coming out this weekend about how I did that, how long it took, how I did it, and how it works being somebody who is not 12 years old on YouTube. Because that seems to be the vast majority of the content creators, which is fantastic. Vast majority of the audience, I think. I was just watching, I'd never really watched Mr. Beast, and I'd seen one or two, and then I showed one to my children, and as I saw how much they loved it, and I saw the video, I realized that he's not making videos for me. He's making videos for them. And rightly so, because on YouTube there are so many more of them, of young eyeballs. The problem that I see, or the issue, or the opportunity, is that while there are a lot more young people on YouTube, now there are a lot of Mr. Beasts. Everybody's trying to do the same thing, or you get a little Ryan Trahan, and then everyone's trying to do that. They're all going at that same audience. So I feel like that's kind of like the beehive that's just buzzing, and I just kind of get away from it, and there's not many bees up here, the old bees, but less audience, less competition, and a much better fit. I do not believe I have much of a chance trying to make content for 12-year-olds, so I'm gonna have to stick at the adults table, see how that goes. That being said, this video is over. You should go now. I'm gonna have to turn it off. See ya.